uh, start working later. I don't know. See my little, see this is on right here. So, um, you know, maybe it'll just be picture time. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think I'm going to use my Ethereal Visions deck today just to start off things. Then that one of the categories on Wheel of Fortune. People, place, or thing. Well, good. I'm glad you can hear it now. It might be adjusting just because I think I had the gain turned up too high on this, so I adjusted it through the app that controls the microphone, right? So you know how that goes. Anyway. Oh my gosh, sorry, I just got a little itch. I was outside, so I might have gotten a little a little sun doing a couple yard work items before our torrential downpour is supposed to come in later this week. So had to get that all done before we go scrapping projects, right? Yeah. High Priestess, use what you know, right? Some people will be like, oh, how do you possess such knowledge? Because you use your brain. Some people never thought about that. They just look around and see what other people are doing, and they say that's good enough. They don't ever want to use their own brain. Think about what they might want to do with their time, right? Which it was kind of funny. I bumped into somebody I hadn't seen in a long time, and they were working on a project that required them to think. Seven of Pentacles. So if you're in the midst of something like that, I feel like this is a sign to keep on the grind. Like, don't let your foot up off the gas. Like, not now. So just because maybe everybody else is like, oh, I'm on summer vacation, I'm not working on anything. Okay, good for them. Maybe this is your busy time. You know what I mean? Like, just because somebody else might be in relax mode, you might still be in the point of like, this is kind of like crucial. You know what I mean? And for some people it could be maybe you have events like through the summertime or something. You know what I mean? Pool party fundraisers and, baseball games and, 4th of July. There's a lot of people that have things, where they're the organizers of that. And they're like, even though it's like, haha, so that's what I'm kind of getting right now. It's like people have this like nervous scramble, something of this nature. So, if you're feeling that and you already are working on something, Seven of Pentacles, stay the course. Okay. Don't let other people pull you into their busy, because they will. Right. And you'll think you have to do it out of the goodness of your heart, or because you've known them for so long, or you support the principles of such and such organization, blah, blah, blah. I think I mentioned not long ago when I went on that bus trip and somebody was asked, talk to me about the organization and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we could put you to work," and I was like, "Oh, I have plenty of my own projects going on right now, but thanks." And I just kind of left it at that. I didn't say anything else because you say like, "Oh yeah," even in joking, they'll be calling you up later, and then you'll be like checking your calendar, and then then you'll start to feel bad, and that's how they rope you in, right? So um don't let other people's nervousness of maybe because they're short staffed, and it's like, well, you still need to finish your projects, you know what your mission on earth is, which is not necessarily their mission. So you know what I mean. Hi there in the chat. Please do be kind to others, especially if you're in the chat. And if you're in the chat, like the video. It's absolutely free. And remember, you do not have to be a subscriber in order to like the video. Three of Pentacles. So as you're doing this, stay in the course here. Look what happens. It's like there's going to be people seeing you working on this stuff, and they're going to be the ones coming to you saying like, what do you got going on? Just like that movie, High Fidelity, when John Cusack owns the record store and he's like, these guys are my employees, but they just kind of started showing up and hanging out. And I'm like, I guess I gave them jobs. It's like that kind of thing where they're like, hey, this is pretty cool, man. And then maybe you do have some money in your pocket that you can start paying people or whatever, but it's like they're supporting the mission. They want to come and help you. And this is happening in present time. Okay. So if for some reason you were like, oh, there's not enough people out there to help, there's, everybody's busy, blah, blah, blah. We all know people say they're busy, and that doesn't mean that they're actually busy. You know what I mean? For some people, busy is doing this. You know what I mean? Like, be it coffee or beer or whatever is in there. I mean, haven't you ever seen the guys at the office? It's like it's their job just to be walking around BSing, and it's like, and like when you first start working there, you think like, man, is that person like some kind of supervisor or something? No, just one of these old farces pushing the limits, right? Of how little he can get done and still get paid. Because by then he's got so much goddamn money, he don't even know what to freaking do with it anyway. So you don't give a shit, right? I'll never remember that. And I thought, when I found out that guy was not like even a supervisor or like a lead person or anything, and I thought, man, he's sure out of his seat an awful lot in this office, walking around with his coffee cup. You know what I mean? Where everyone else is getting, like inspected by their supervisor and stuff. But I think it was just, yeah, like he just didn't care at that point. He's kind of like, oh, well, you know what I mean? Probably by then he already has house paid for, I mean, he was always talking about how he had this, that going on. And it's like, okay. Anyway, next question. Scorpionic energy death card. Yeah. Okay. So if for some reason there were some other contract possibilities, those are ending. And it's going to be like, yeah, you don't have time to be doing, you don't have time to be volunteering to be the backup of whatever. You know what I mean? And that's the thing too, is like, you can sign up as an alternate or whatever. No, if your name's on anything, they're going to be calling you and expect you to be there, period. Because there's going to be other people who won't show up. And it's going to be, your decision collective where it's like, well, maybe they just don't need your name on that piece of paper. You know what I mean? Where it's like, because if you do, otherwise you're going to have that obligation. And then what happens? Then it gets in the mucky muck. Right. And then it's like, oh, I feel resentful. And well, whose fault is that, collective? Sometimes that's on us. Right. Now, I'm not saying people can't ride you, especially if it's, family or friends and stuff like that. and it's like, then they make you feel like the bad guy for saying no. And you're like, But remember, would they have, ever hinted at helping you out of the kindness of their heart? Anyway, 10 of Pentacles. Yeah, look at that. See, again, 10 and 10. So it's kind of like you had this existing business model, right? And finally, the right people are coming. But that means the old folks that you worked with before, they're not going to be on the other side of this with you. They're going to have to figure that out on their own. You already did. Okay. All right. Let's get a couple more cards here. To find out more. It's kind of interesting to read how this is coming out today. I don't, anyway. Very, very pentacle heavy. And, Scorpios like their, like having that money in the bag, right? As we all should, because, we all got bills to pay. Anyway, 2 of Swords. Yeah, you could feel like you were being pressured to, even maybe give something up. But no, this is like, blind faith, keeping the faith with whatever you're working on. And it's what you're working on. It's not dependent on what so-and-so is working on. It's what you're working on. Remember that. Okay. So this isn't like, oh, you're working on something and all of a sudden somebody else comes up and is like, oh, I have this great opportunity for you. You have to drop everything that you're doing and come work on my stuff now. No. Page of Wands. Yeah, you could be getting some kind of notification about people that want to help you, or, possibly be in your employment. Okay. If you're, if you are running a business, or if you like, again, that movie High Fidelity, where, they just start showing up at his record store and he's like, he's like, I felt bad, so I had to give them jobs, so they were here, but it's like, they were the people that were helping keep his little, empire going, right? 6 of Pentacles. So yeah, whereas maybe before it wasn't exactly an even split collective, maybe some of these people were benefiting more from the transaction than you were. So wherever that didn't balance out, that's where you're, kind of being asked to make that decision when the time comes, especially if somebody does come with their hand out and is like, oh, why can't you help me? And it's like, yeah. And, because sometimes it's like, well, didn't you help yourself before? And what happened? You know what I mean? And did they help anyone else while they were helping themselves? Oh, no. Oh, and then they went out of their way to kick other people while they were down on top of it. Like, who the heck are these people? Collective, it's like, does that make good sense? Business sense? Be involved with that? Do I need my master's in business to tell you that, or is that some common sense there as well? Because some people will be like, oh, well, this is the only person that you can deal with because they're the only ones that do it and stuff. And it's like, people like to think that way. That don't mean it's true. 3 of Swords. Yeah. So again, some people think like, in order to get to this, you have to deal with the heartbreak. You have to do blah, blah. And it's like, you may have dealt with that, but that does not mean you have to keep dealing with that in order to get this. Does that make sense? That's why people will, you know, get into these relationships and they think they have to stay, because it's like, the struggle of, right? And then, yeah, here, underside tower, it's like, it's like they're grasping at straws, trying to hold on to, you collective, because maybe you have it together. You have a plan. You're actually working on something. You actually have people coming to you wanting to work with you. Whereas maybe they're finding out, oh, maybe their business practices weren't that great, so people are severing those contracts. It's like, what did you expect? So, this person could come to you with a sob story, things of that nature. I'm just saying. All right. And again, that could be part of this, where people want you to like drop everything and like, oh, come help me. And it's like, wait a second. I still have this going on. Yeah, well, it's only 7 pentacles. Like, what do you need to work, like you've been working on that for years. Like, well, look at how long it took Julia Child to do that cookbook. Rome was not built in a day. You know, how do you think those pyramids got there? Dogged persistence. So trust your instincts is what I'm getting on this. Especially if somebody wants to pressure you into like signing like a new contract or something, and you could be like, you know what, this year I'm going with somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, just simple as that. It's like this is not like, a cell phone plan in 2005 where they rope you in for 24 months. You know, it's like, oh, is that a cell phone? No, it's a toddler. I mean, like, what? 24 months? Thank God things are a little different now. Okay. And for some people, right, we're like, yes, I'm happy that that death came to those kind of business practices, right? Because now I can get something a little bit more balanced out, something a little bit more equal, something a little bit more fair, something a little bit more, instead of where it feels like you're just handing out, handing out, handing out. And it's like, you know, and then it's like you pay for all the extra coverages, and then like you go and take it in somewhere and it's like, oh yeah, but that's not covered. It's like, really? Well, I can't get out of this 24-month long contract. Oh, but you can upgrade and start a new contract for 24. You know what I mean? It's just like, sorry to break your heart, insert insert company here, but I'm not on a hamster wheel anymore. We already downshifted out of that. And the collective, that's part of the reason why you might be counting your 10 of Pentacles. You know? And maybe this is specific to somebody getting, a different phone or something, or, and I'm not trying to say, who's better or whatever. And I understand like everybody's coverage is different too, where depending on where you live and stuff. But it's just the mentality or mindset, right? Where people want to make you make decisions under their umbrella, and you're like, well, I actually don't have to have this umbrella. I can get a different umbrella. They're like, "No, but you're supposed to use our umbrella." And you're like, "Yeah, I didn't well, your umbrella wasn't working too good. I got a little damp and it was unpleasant to be honest." So, they used to call it, umbrella policy, umbrella insurance policy, right? Where it's supposed to do more, right, than just what you think the basics are, right? And it's like, oh, I didn't realize I had to tell you to open the umbrella when I needed it, you know. And they're like, "But I gave you an umbrella, but you didn't open it for me." And maybe that's the arrangement that you have. So, yeah. Anyway. Um yeah, so you're being asked to be patient as well. We just had that Sagittarius full moon. Okay, or full moon in Sagittarius, however you want to say it. Um Venus is still visible. The tower is Mars, so that might have something to do with too. Like there might have been some kind of communication issue as well, where somebody was like, "Oh yeah, me and so are tight like this, and I know they're gonna go for it." And meanwhile, maybe you have no idea of this even happening, no exposure to the vision that they're talking about. And that, again, that might be where you're just like, well, I think I'm gonna have to pass on that for now. Maybe next year when I'm looking at my projected services or expenditures, I'll think about something like that if it's in the budget. And for some people it's like, when you're cutting off their juice, right? What happens sometimes? You get angry. So again, that Mars, and they could be like, "Oh, well, you said I thought we had this, and I thought we had some kind of understanding." No, we did not have any kind of understanding whatsoever. In fact, I never even talked to this person about that. And they thought, because, oh, your family or your friend or we go way back, that you are going to somehow cover for them. And you're finding out, like, and to be honest, you're like, that's the first thing I want to be doing anyway, because I have no idea what they're up to. And if it was such a great deal, why didn't they really tell me about it? Then yeah, man, I could have had your back anyway, right? And I could have been like, "Oh yeah, they're working on this and that and blah blah." Well, yeah, collective. I feel like you're kind of like, I don't think so. Again, you're like, you're like, I kind of got my hands full with the Seven of Pentacles anyway. Like, and then somebody be like, "Oh, well, that's why I didn't want to bother you." Blah blah blah. Well, don't go around acting like you got my signature, because you didn't, and you don't. Yeah, I mean, the tax man does, but that's the tax man. You know what I mean? You know, 'cause on a good day, some of these folks, you don't know them from Adams. Anyway, and that's how they would treat you as well. So again, who signed up for what? Where? Let's see the receipts. Let's see the signatures. Let's see the video. All right? Isn't there some video surveillance? I mean, they got that everywhere these days. Oh, you can't provide none of that now? Just word of mouth, huh? Okay. Good luck with that. Good luck with that in today's society. Good luck with that. That don't hold up in a court of law, son. You know what they call that? Hearsay. Separation, time apart from your partner is on the horizon. So with that 7 of Pentacles, this could be one of those things where you're just like, look, I just got to buckle down on this. You know, it's going to take me a week longer than I anticipated. You know, stuff like that. Where it's not like it's a big deal. It's just, hey, you know, when you're going to get through this is going to be great. It's going to be gravy. You already know that because you had the 10 of Pentacles in the outcome. So anybody that's worth their salt is not going to have a problem with that. I think I told you guys before, once when I had to travel for work, the person I was seeing, like, flip down. Like, flip down. It's like, this is my livelihood. This puts a roof over my head. Like, what? Flirt. Extend your lighthearted energy to others. So with this Page of Wands, that could be something here, kind of as you explore some of these new contracts, you might be exposed to some people who maybe you wouldn't normally, and say, do some kind of, you know, have some kind of flirtation. Okay, so religious factors. Your love life is influenced by your religious upbringing and spiritual path. Okay, so collective, especially with the 6 of Pentacles, sometimes people that are in certain religions don't feel equally valued in partnerships. So I feel like that's kind of what's coming through. So that itself might be being examined. Okay, especially if you are a single person and you're like, and if this person comes, you know, if you know that person comes back around and is like, oh, but we can make it better this time and blah blah blah, and you're like, look, I've already learned to balance this out on my own, you know. So, you know, don't let somebody put you into imbalance, you know, citing religion or citing, you know what I mean? Because that is a manipulation tactic. That's what turns people off from religion, right? You know, and people will be like, oh, well, God said that I need to come over here and apologize and blah, 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 and try and make it up to you. And you know, and they'll sit there and they'll talk for like an hour till they're blue in the face. And then 1 week later, guess what? They haven't made any progress. They're just looking at the latest person who's not going to buy the story. And especially if they know that you have this kind of background or whatever, they will try and use that against you. And they'll try and say like, oh, well, you know, don't you want a family? And don't you want sure, but not with you. Right? You, I mean, you don't even have to go that far, but you might have to tell them. Right? But Just saying. Don't be afraid to cut it off because, well, the Bible says you're supposed to do this and that. Oh yeah, with adults who want to act like adults, not with adults that want to act like little teenagers and children's. Okay? Because those are the ones that are like, oh no, I can't make it through Revelation. It's too scary. Well, then what the heck are you even doing over here, man? Go sit down somewhere till you're ready, right? And let the adults figure it out. Because some of us have already had our personal revelations, haven't we? You know, and it's yeah. I don't want to say it's the born agains or whatever, but it's similar to some of that sentiment where it's like, oh, all of a sudden, and it's like, who are you preaching to, man? Because last time I checked, ain't nobody breaking no law over here. So why don't you go on with your bad self? You know what I mean? Like, find a new sounding board, if you will. Trust. This situation is calling for you to have faith. Okay. Yeah. So if for some reason, collective, this is like what you're, seeing currently, and it's like, oh, and maybe you're like, I don't even want to work with anybody else because they just stabbed me in the back anyway. Maybe even a friend, blah, blah. Just keep focused on this 10 of Pentacles that you're going to be getting. Okay. Have trust in that because you're a hard worker. Okay. And the more you focus on that, this is going to become like, part of the rear view. All right. And then where it's going to be one of those things you're like, oh, can you believe I was so upset whenever about so and so? Is in the words of Jody Watley, what have you done for me lately? Where's that a Janet Jackson song? I'll have to look that up. Anyway. On the bottom of the deck here, heart-to-heart conversations. Honestly discuss your feelings with each other. Again, if this person doesn't want to discuss it, what can you do? Well, you're supposed to chase them around like they're a little child. You're supposed to run after them like they're a teenager. Oh, no. Okay. Maybe they're not mature enough to have a heart-to-heart conversation. Oh well. Collective, you're on the next level. And it's like, it's you're pulling away, and you can only outstretch your arm so far until it's just going to be there's no going back. It's like the separation has already occurred. Okay. For some of you, this might be easy letting go. For others, you might, I feel like this is, it might be good for you guys, to like some journaling, anything to help exercise your throat chakra and your feelings around the situation. Okay. So, All right. Hopefully that resonates with you guys today. Remember the tip about the cilantro. 1 inch of water in a mason jar, topped off with plastic bag, keeps in the fridge for 3 semanas, according to the Farmer's Almanac. So, and it is the old Farmer's Almanac, not the new Farmer's Almanac, right? Kind of like how we have the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, there's people that want to fight over that too. We don't talk about the Old Testament here. We only talk about the New Testament. Pardon me. This is what I'm saying, collective, is like some folks just want to remain so inflexible that they, you know, kind of do it to themselves where they're not necessarily pleasurable to be around. Again, you may need to reconsider, like, what are you getting out of this interaction, this, whatever. So, and maybe that's part of this religious factors where it's like, some people aren't ready to let things go. Even in like maybe like a literal passing could have occurred, and someone's just like, oh, well, it has to be done this way because so and so did it this way, and you know what I mean? And it's like, need to take that breath, collective. Okay, refocus on what you're working on. And if that's the case, then those answers are going to come. But to get so wrapped up in it in the moment and what other people might want you to do, and they could even be like, oh, well, it was their wish that we do this and blah blah blah. Again, you could be like, well, I never had that conversation with them, so that was not communicated to me. Your religion or your book might say something, but that doesn't mean you get to project it on everybody else about what it means. Okay. So, and again, here where it says Love Life Collective, this could be one of those things where, somebody belongs to a very specific subsect of, Christianity or something. And they're like, oh, no, you can only date somebody that goes to our church. This kind of thing. Or you can only date somebody who believes in this exact type of religion, I think the message here is to be a little bit more open-minded about it. Okay. I mean, I had a supervisor once, his one was Christian, one was Jewish, but they both celebrated. And then I thought it was kind of neat. Then the kids got to celebrate more, kind of more holidays, and like understand more what, you know what I mean? Anyway. So, the thought of, oh, it has to be this, or you have to do that kind of thing. That's kind of that old, that old mentality. There's a reason why we read the Old Testament, to learn from old mentalities. Because people will argue all day long, oh, well, in the Bible they did this. Is that what you want? No, I don't want that, but I'm glad that I read about it so I can learn about how crazy people were and know that we don't have to do that. That's called using your own discernment. Although I was watching a movie the other day and they had a scene where the characters were attending a a ceremony for the circumcision. Anyway, I think as performed by a certain kind of rabbi or something. Anyway, I hadn't seen a scene. I was like, oh my God. So again, religious factors. Okay. So this could be part of the heart-to-heart conversation that you need to have with whoever this is, and maybe for somebody it is a non-negotiable. And if it's a non-negotiable for them, then it's like, well, if you're not going to convert or do whatever, you know what I mean? And sometimes that's what they want you to do. They want you to walk on eggshells around their family, and you have to act like this, and you have to dress like this, and no. Like you might have to have a conversation about that and be like, I'm my own person. Not just an extension of somebody else, like an amoeba. Yeah. So underneath here it says engagement too. So I feel like, collective, you're on the right path. Okay. So, don't be afraid of a little flirtation, some of it may really just be kind of innocent as you're moving through with your day, right? Where it's not necessarily a big deal. Anyway. All right. I think that's all I have. I'm going to go ahead and do these Moonology ones here. We're going to go ahead and do these Moonologies. Message retracted. Thank you for the likes so far in the chat. A time for healing. Okay. So going back to that 7 of Pentacles collective, whatever you're working on, it might be very healing for you. You might feel very empowered. Okay. A new romantic cycle begins. Again, with that flirtation thing. So I feel like for some of you collective, you're definitely going to be meeting somebody as you try and finish out this project. Okay. And it might not be somebody that you're actually going to be working with, but maybe it's like, I don't know, a friend of theirs or something that you meet at some social event or something, it's some kind of acquaintancy type thing. Okay. That's what I'm getting. Don't let your past hold you back, South Node. Okay. So you might want to check out your South Node and think about, what kinds of things related to that are you ready to, say, you know what, we already did that. You know, we already did that. So, you know, and especially if it is this kind of religious factors. And I had on the movie The Matrix sometime last week, and what's been standing out to me in a few readings now, and I haven't mentioned this in any of the other readings, but where that scene where they're in the Lincoln, and she opens the door and it's raining out there, and he's like, I'm done with this. He's ready to get out of the vehicle. And she was like, you know where that road goes, Neo. Right. So in terms of don't let your past hold you back, this might be one of those things where it's like, yeah, you could do that, but you already know how that's going to turn out. So, those options that you have, you might want to weigh them a little bit more carefully. Okay. One just fell down here. Look at that. Surrender to the divine. Okay, so this is with that trust, that 10 of Pentacles. So, collective, this is coming to you. Your dreams need a practical plan. Okay, so again, back to that 7, where, just keep on working at it, and it's like you're gonna get the solutions as you keep working on it. Whereas if you get caught up in something like this, then that's, just chaos. And that's not what you're trying to get out of life right now. Right. So, in this heart to heart conversation, this could be one of those things where, like, I saw something on, I think it was on one of the Reddits or something, or I can't remember. Anyway, it was somebody talking about how, they relocated for somebody, and with the thought that they were going to move in together, and then it was like a year had gone by and they hadn't moved in together. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know if that person actually is going to commit, right? Where, your dreams needing a practical plan, if that person's not moving towards that same goal that you are, then, well, what's the point? And there was a lot of people telling this person, like, yeah, you need to move on, move away from there, because that person's not serious about committing, all sorts of things. Okay. So that could be one of the things, collective. It's like where you're like, I'm not your option. Like where it's like they're not showing that effort, they're not showing that, that reciprocity here for 6 of Pentacles. Okay. And you're like, well, I know what the last year's been like, so what would the future be like with that person? Even worse. Even worse. So you cut those ties now. Maybe you can get back to business. Whereas maybe this person is, only a distraction. All right. So, all right, collective, that is all I have for you today. Please do like the video, especially if you are in the chat today. Remember, you do not have to be a subscriber in order to like the video. Until next time, please do manifest wisely. Bye-bye.